This is the talk show that takes a no-holds-barred approach to politics, where truth and integrity are the standard and the Constitution honored. From Renaissance Studios, this is Champion News Talk Radio.
Good morning and welcome to another great edition of Champion News Talk Radio, brought to you by championnews.net. This is Carol Parisi. Thank you for getting up early with us this morning on the day after St. Patrick's Day, and I hope y'all had all your merrymaking and some fun. Good morning, Jack. How are you this day after good old St. Patty's Day?
Oh, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. There's so much to do with this election coming up and so many interesting things happening. But we can take up all of that later in the program. We have a new guest on here today, Bruno Behrend.
Yes.
And
hi, Carol.
Bruno, you've had a lot to do in recent times with the Heartland Institute.
Right.
And used to have a radio program of your own?
Yes, I did.
Yeah,
I had a radio program up in WKRS in Waukegan. Actually, the only reason I got that show was because of your generosity getting me on. I was actually very few people know this, I was actually the first live local show on WIND when they went from Hispanic language programming or Spanish programming to back to talk, and I was like the first live local talk show host on WIND. Of course, that was on the weekends. I didn't get that Michael Medved gig.
Well, you know, this Tuesday is a big day for all of us. This is our primary date, so we just have to remind everybody, if you haven't early voted, get out there Tuesday. And Bruno, let's talk a little bit about...
Incidentally, let me put a thing in for Sharon Maroney. She's very hard to turn off, and she worked her way into the Chicago voting system on all of the ways they have to manage it. It's some 15 different rules, and anyway, she's wormed in there, and she got out downstate with those fellas too. And one of the things she revealed is that they have never audited the early voting, and it will be audited this year.
That's a huge important thing.
And she's knocked out the fact that they've been using aliens for operating the system.
Aliens like E.T.?
Well, people that are not American citizens have been operating the system. Well, listen, this is the most crooked state in the whole Union, all 50, not the 54 that Obama thinks there are. There's 54 or 57 Arab states. He's more loyal to the other bunch. But that's running off a little bit. But,
so this is protecting the vote. This is what Sharon's doing basically is she's making sure that we're auditing the voting systems. I'm one of those people. I think Illinois should go back to dipping your finger in purple ink. I think voting should take place on Election Day. I think if your ballot isn't in by 6 or by the time the polls close, it doesn't count. All of this stuff about expanding vote by mail and early voting and all the different provisional ballots, this is all invitation to fraud.
You know what, though? Hold on a minute. There's a lot of folks that go out of town. I know my husband travels for business. One of the gals on our team's taking her family. They're all leaving.
They can vote absentee, and that's an entirely different thing.
Right.
Okay.
That's entirely
it's
different.
A different
but
protocol.
They have both absentee and early vote. They ought to get rid of the early vote.
Yeah, all of these things are just invitation to fraud.
Yeah, the people that are running have not had time. They're not in the intensive area where we're really examining what they are all about. And so people are voting early are, take this thing with Dan Patlack and this Morrison fella. My daughter-in-law asked me, she thought she'd vote for Morrison. Who did I think? I said, just don't do it. That guy's lying about Patlack, and we'll get into it later.
Yeah.
But the early voters aren't going to find out all of the rotten stuff that's attached to this guy Morrison.
Well, yeah, a couple weeks ago, last week, it was the girls he didn't pay for some girl fight club. But anyway, let's talk about...
We're more about Bruno.
Let's talk about Bruno. Bruno,
yes,
you're a champion of a lot of research, and I know that we've had private conversations on Illinois pension crisis.
Right.
And folks, in the next couple days here, you got to vote for good conservatives that are going to have the political will to do what's necessary in Springfield and elsewhere to overcome this pension crisis.
Right.
Let's talk a little bit about Illinois pensions and some of your ideas for solutions.
Well, first of all, there's a really easy cop-out for everybody that doesn't want to work on pensions or fix pensions. And they love to look at the Illinois Illinois Constitution Pension Guarantee Clause, and then they like to tell you it's guaranteed in the Constitution, so there's nothing we can do about it. The fact is that there's still plenty that you can do about it.
Let's stop here right now and talk about the Constitution. That clause in the Constitution is one sentence.
Right.
It isn't a big paragraph. It is one sentence.
What does the sentence say?
Well, without having the exact sentence out there, it basically says that the pension benefits for public employees cannot be cut or suffer any diminution or
diminished or impaired.
Diminished or impaired is the exact.
Well, that means they get their pensions then.
Actually,
it doesn't.
What that means is, are those pension benefits fully accrued or vested? And if they are not, they can be changed. And the next question is, what happens if the entire pension fund goes bankrupt or doesn't have enough money to pay everybody? Does that mean that the Illinois state taxpayer automatically simply has to keep replenishing the pension fund? And those questions have not been answered. My advice to every politician would be to be aggressive. And if it precipitates a suit on the parts of the pension plans or the unions or the public employees, then go ahead and precipitate the suit, because the state cannot afford. And here's what everybody needs to know. We have an immovable object, a pension guarantee clause, meeting an unstoppable force, which is simple insolvency and fiscal bankruptcy. The state cannot afford the promises it has made.
But the state has not been paying into the pensions.
Let's go back to reinforce one of the statements you made here about paying for it. Madigan, who is the guy that's Speaker of the House and runs the state of Illinois, Madigan is the maximum political leader. Madigan, this past year, passed a bill for $3.7 billion of bonds to be issued to pay these crazy pensions of $200,000 and $300,000 for these goofy 870 superintendents that we've got in the state of Illinois. And these guys are marching off at age 55 with pensions of over $200,000, and that's what's put us at least $80 billion in the hole just on the teacher pensions,
right,
and just on the what's called the teachers' retirement system. But he passed a bond of $3.7 billion.
Yeah.
And to continue to pay these outrageous pensions that should never be paid. They should not be paid. They are the result of a manipulation of the laws on pensions for the teaching unions.
So those are all the things, and there's so what you can do.
He indebted us $3.7 billion just last year to pay these lousy damn pensions. And at the same time, he didn't pay roughly a little less than $2 billion about other outstanding bills. And a lot of those are for people that are laying in beds, the blind, the aged, and the disabled that should be taken care of, aren't being taken care of, because Madigan is still paying the pensions to the teachers union that are pumping all the money into Madigan. Madigan and his daughter each got roughly $1 million each in political stuff in the last recent history.
From who?
Right. Well,
from the IEA, the so-called Illinois Education Association, which is the biggest problem politically we have got in the whole state. And I'd be glad to talk limitlessly about the troubles that they have made with the immense amount of money that they take from the teachers. There's $50 million a year, as Zettler has shown in a lot of the stuff we published, $50 million a year that goes from the dues that the teachers pay to the IEA and to
right
the
into
CTA.
right into the pockets of the politicians. So that, and what they're doing is that they're using this excuse of the pension guarantee clause to say you can't touch our pensions, when in fact there's a lot of things you can do, and I would advise every politician, both parties, to be aggressive. If someone has a pension of over $200,000, they can pay 100% of their own health care. So you just simply stop paying for their
And
health
that
care.
pension starts at age 55.
Yeah.
Everybody's living longer. My cohort.
Well, and here's what they're doing. They're taking jobs. So they don't, to get their pension, they don't even have to retire. They can say they're retiring, and then they go off into California. There's a guy earning $200,000, $300,000 as a superintendent in California who's pulling down a $250,000 pension from Illinois. If you're working, shut the pensions off. Challenge these things in court. They've got to start doing it.
Well, why do you think they're not doing it?
Well, number one, they listen to a lot of really bad Republicans who are telling them, oh, you can't touch this stuff. You just can't do it.
The
And you
business
just have
groups
to.
downtown are pussycats.
Yeah.
They don't have any real remedy, and they should have more sense than that.
Listen, the real reason that they're sending us down the rabbit hole with a bottomless pit is because they are obligated and indebted to the IEA that put them in office.
Political.
And the NEA. Let's talk more about it when we come back after